Hello and welcome to the award-winning Tough Girl podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm thrilled to announce a special collaboration with Innovate, a world-renowned and ambitious sportswear pioneer. Innovate is a UK-based company who are dedicated to empowering athletes with their cutting-edge products, which have been designed to enhance both physical and mental performance. I've been wearing Innovate trainers and sportswear since 2019 on all my adventures and challenges around the world, most recently over in New Zealand while I walked the Tiara Trail and in Spain when I was on the Camino Viva de la Plata. With Innovate's support, I'm able to continue showcasing incredible female role models who take on adventures and physical challenges. Stay tuned for an incredible episode filled with stories, insights, top tips and advice to motivate and inspire you. To find out more about Innovate, visit the Tough Girl website or search Innovate Sportswear online.
My name is Mireille Siné, and I'm currently based in Los Angeles, California, but I'm originally from Cameroon, which is a country in West Africa. Came to LA when I was a kid with my family, and we've been here ever since. I am a running coach, a Lupus athlete. Generally, an entrepreneur is actually the word I've been using lately because I not only have coaching, but I also have a podcast and all of these plans to execute on a lot of other creative activities, but definitely enjoying that entrepreneur / solopreneur life right now.
So take us back to when you were a child. I mean, do you remember your time in Cameroon before you moved over to LA, or how old were you when you moved over to America?
Yeah, I was pretty young. I had my 6th birthday here. So definitely in those years from I think maybe 4 to 5 is what I remember the most. I remember the house I grew up in, not a lot of the early years, but I think it was in 2016, I want to say, was my first time that I actually went back to visit as an adult. And the only thing that that I remember then was, again, the house that I lived in. And we got to do a walk through there because my uncle still takes care of it. So I got to see the room where I slept in with my mom and my brother and my little baby bassinet and all this stuff. So it was 50% everything was new to me, from family members to villages and towns and things like that. And then the other 50 was just oh yeah, I could remember the actual street or the house that I grew up in. But yeah.
What were your early years like in terms of your activities? How active were you? What did you like to get involved in?
It was fairly normal. Our biggest reason for coming to LA was definitely for education. So back then it was just my brother and I, and then it soon expanded to all my sisters. But yeah, my parents definitely understood the importance of education and how good it was in the States here versus back home. So they wanted to give us that opportunity to finish school and go on to college and all that stuff. So that was definitely the driving force. And when we were younger, my dad was active himself. He used to be a cyclist, not professionally, but for fun. So he had actually done the cycling portion of the LA Marathon. And, I watched him do that a couple of times and how he was so proud of his medals. And he got my brother and I into sports at our local park, into the Pee Wee and Little League type stuff. So we came up doing basketball when I was maybe 7 or 8. My brother would have been maybe 6. So yeah, going to the local basketball club and practices and games and all that. And then that kind of translated to me to actually being active, at school. So I would play basketball at recess and was very into just sort of running around. I didn't look at running back then as a punishment. It was just fun as a little kid.
So what did you want to be when you were older? Did you want to become sort of a professional athlete, or did you know that you wanted to work in sort of the coaching space or the athletic space?
No, I had zero genes of that back then. When I was younger, I wanted to be what I would say is the big 3. It was either going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or maybe the president. But definitely very ambitious dreams when I was younger because, yeah, I loved school. I loved learning. I loved academics. And I always figured, if I worked hard, really hard, then I could get to these places. And those were also sort of safe professions that made sense to me. If I wanted to help out my family or to live a good life. Back then, I used to equate that to one of these more prestigious professions. I think that kind of maybe started coming into question the more I went on in school. So by the time I was in high school, I wasn't looking at being a lawyer. I wasn't quite looking at being the president or what have you, but I was still very interested in science. So I went to a science magnet basically for high school. And a lot of their programming was geared towards people who were headed in that direction. And so back then I went from being maybe a doctor to maybe forensics. Like forensics started feeling really cool to me. And that's what I was kind of like hanging on to, I guess, in my decision to even go to college. I still was a part of the arts and such, like dancing kind of never left me even through middle school and high school. And by the end of high school, I was definitely sort of contemplating, like, could someone have a career in dance or something other, or another like profession that requires, like your physical body.
I mean, I love what you studied. Do you want to share what you studied as your major?
In college?
Yeah.
So I went on to study exercise science. So I have my bachelor's of science in that realm. And I went to Cal State Long Beach over here. And it was a great decision because they had the facilities to really support that major. We shared a lot of our stuff with our nursing school because they're also a very prominent nursing school. So it's like I've got front row view into labs, whether it was like a DEXA scan or a VO2 testing or even a submergent tank to find your VO2 max, from anything from that to even like having a full on cadaver lab where we got a very intimate look at like anatomy and physiology and all that stuff.
I believe that's the point when you started like exploring sort of longer distances in running. I suppose everyone around you just must have been into sports and exercise and
Yeah. A lot of people around me, they either wanted to be like personal trainers. I learned a lot of people actually got their personal training certification while they were in school. And in retrospect, that was pretty cool. I wish it was something that I did, but a lot of my peers were either going to, get their master's in exercise science to teach, or they wanted to go on to be physical therapists or something in that realm. That's why I picked the major. Also, my first kind of big career shift or decision was around physical therapy. I started running track back in high school. And definitely by then it was like for the social aspects of it. And then once I got to college and we started getting into all these labs and testing and schooling, that's what sort of made me curious about distance running, because we then became the subjects ourselves, along with our peers. So we also had like that 5K time trial, and we were expected to keep our own training and nutrition log and all that. It was very like incubator type vibe. And it definitely, what came out of it was like, first, I thought I would pursue physical therapy and that would be sort of my gig, and then tried going that route after graduating, trials and tribulations through there in like the whole application process, and really eye-opening into just how impacted a profession could be. And I was also in that period where like the world of physical therapy was making that shift from just being a master's program into that doctorate level program. And that's sort of like where I ran into the issue of deciding like if it was really the career for me after all.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned when you were sort of like in high school that you found like running to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Did that continue when you were at college, when you started doing more distances? And what did you enjoy most about running?
It shifted at first. In high school, I was mainly doing the sprints and the hurdles. Like speed was fun to me, and not so much like the warm up and the cool down parts of practices that felt endless, even though it was probably just a mile and a half. But the shift happened in college where, I wasn't on a team. I never played collegiate sports, but we had a gym. We had great facilities. We had a big campus. So it was normal to see people sort of running around campus and in and around the neighborhoods. And that's when it became fun to me because it was time to myself and it was something that I could control. Even like after I did all the classes that required running, I kept up running on my own because it made me feel really good. It made me feel healthy, especially like in college when everything is so new and you're inundated with a lot of information daily, like taking the time out to pause, breathe, and go on a little 5K run, just for yourself became really beneficial to me.
You did suffer sort of a little bit of a setback with regards to your health and fitness. Would you like to share what happened in that instance?
So college for me started out pretty normal, full load of classes, probably taking on way more than I should have at the time because, I was very eager. And I think I was one of those people that like handled a lot in high school. And I thought that would translate to college. And we don't really learn that college is a whole different beast. So I was definitely taking on a lot more than I can chew. And then added stressors of trying to do like extracurriculars with clubs and dance teams and working out on my own and just basically staying healthy. I think the stress of all that and just from daily living kind of came back to bite me in a big way, even though it wasn't intentional. But I ended up being diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder called lupus. in 2013, the end of summer of 2013. And prior to that, I kind of spent a year and a half just feeling really off and really sick at times, and lots of visit to doctor's office, community clinic, occasionally the ER, where I kept trying to be admitted because I progressively got worse, whether it was my joints being really stiff, retaining a lot of water and swelling, having trouble sleeping, losing a bunch of weight in a not like normal time. That should have kind of been my key indicator. And just like physiologically feeling off, got very sensitive to temperature even, right? It was hard for me to stay warmer longer and all this stuff. And eventually, as things got worse, I did get admitted to the ER at the community hospital that was by campus. And that's when I actually got the diagnosis of lupus.
It must have been just such an unsettling time for you. Like, just just not feeling good, not feeling yourself, knowing that your body is not doing what it should be doing. So in a way, it almost must have been like a little bit of a relief getting the diagnosis. But after getting the diagnosis, what did that mean for you? What sort of changes did you have to make?
The interesting thing about that question is that present me has a very different answer. I definitely tend to answer in what I wish I had done, but I'm able to look and reflect on who I was at the time. And at the time, it was very hard for me to pivot. I could feel that this was an opportunity to make a shift or to make a change in my life, but I was already just kind of set in that career goal or career path and wanting to graduate and get my degree. It wasn't an opportune time, but getting sick never is. But it was also, I was on that cusp of I had a year left in school and I had to decide if was physical therapy something I really wanted? How would lupus affect such a physically demanding job at times and things like that? So I wish at the time I had almost the courage to say, this is my time to pivot, but I almost doubled down after the diagnosis. It was in my early 20s, had a lot of growing to do. I'm able to see that now, but yes, it did present an interesting conundrum at the time. And I did what I thought was best. I think that's kind of the best way that I can answer that is that knowing what I had and knowing what I had left to do as far as college and a degree. Once I was able to get treatment and feel a little bit better, I did have to take some time off of school. I took a semester off, which, ended up pushing back the graduation, but took some time for myself to make sure, treatment was going okay. And then by the time I was back in school, it was that quote unquote grind again, because I was just so close to the finish line. And all I really wanted to do was to get that degree. And then I told myself I would figure out what's next.
So you got your degree, and what was next?
What was next was still trying to pursue doctorate in physical therapy. So in the meantime, I'm working as a PT assistant and OT assistant in a couple of different clinics to get my hours up. It was a requirement for school also. And I generally loved physical therapy, right? The ability to assist someone post-surgery or post-injury into getting better. And it kept me in the world of just physical activity and exercise, which kind of was my saving grace after getting diagnosed, was returning to running as a form of getting back to a healthier state of mind, a healthier state of being. But the struggles that I came up against, whether it was getting rejected from everywhere that I applied, or finally getting the interview at this one school I wanted to go to, just to then get rejected also. So it felt like in about 5 years' time, I was faced with what should I do after being diagnosed? And then what should I do after I've exhausted all my resources in trying to pursue this career that doesn't look like it's actually going to be an open road for me.
Did running play a part in this, in terms of, being able to de-stress, get out there, spend time in nature, move your body?
Yeah, definitely. Once I got the all clear to start working out again, it was starting from ground zero. I like to say it's I had never worked out a day in my life the way that I struggled, but it was helpful. It kind of came back to just being that one thing that I could do for myself, and it was in my control. And, I wasn't doing it for a test or a class or things like that. So that's what I chose. I slowly started to run around the campus again, or even at the gym, and the acceptance of knowing that I wasn't as fit as I was before, but I still had a means and a way to work my way back was very rewarding and touching for me. And I could see how overcoming the discomfort of, that first year of running was equating to me sort of like gaining my own life back, like post diagnosis, and kind of taking the reins again. And that's what I kept doing, after I graduated and I moved back home, and I was looking for work while trying to figure out what I was going to do about grad school. Getting introduced to the running community here in LA was very, very beneficial. It was like a huge turning point for me, going from mostly running solo back in college to just like running with hundreds of other runners on every week here, whether that was like a speed run, a long run, and even just getting introduced to these different types of runs. Like I had only known one thing, which was like, you run, you get tired, you rest, you get up and do it again. But to learn that, there's such a thing as an easy run and the track workout and all this stuff. So moving back up to LA and joining that running community was kind of like the next big like aha or light bulb moment in my mind.
And is that when you got the idea to run a marathon, or is running a marathon something that you've always wanted to do?
I had never had an inkling of running a marathon. I thought it was cool, and I just didn't know what it would take, but definitely being in the community kind of opened my eyes to how far we can push ourselves as individuals. I like to tell the story that we'd have our group runs on the weekends, and there was always two different groups. So a group of us could be going, 5 to 8 miles, and that was our quote unquote long run that day. But when I started to see people constantly doing 12 plus miles every weekend, I was like, oh, like what is going on? Like, how are you not tired? And I do 10 miles and I need a nap. If it wasn't for like having the support of everybody that was already like doing these half marathons and marathons, or even the support of the community coaches that we had at the time, I don't know if I would have planted that marathon seed in my head if there wasn't like a group of people that had already done it, that was showing me how it could be done to help support and lift me in that time.
How do you get the balance right, sort of back then when you decide to go for a marathon, between, doing these training, running these long distances, but also getting the balance right with managing your lupus to make sure that you're not, burning out and sort of destroying yourself. Did you get support with that? Like, how did you figure that out? Or is that sort of like something that you figured out for yourself? Or what did that look like?
It was definitely me figuring out for myself. It was a gamble for sure, because the thing about it was that there's not a lot of people in healthcare, or at least on this like immunology side, that I have found that are also into endurance sports. So it's not like I could go to them for recommendation, because they, of course, will have to play the safe side. They would tell me, not to spend a lot of time in the sun, make sure I'm wearing sunscreen, watch out for that fatigue, like all the different things that could bring on a lupus flare. But I was in the mindset that like doing this marathon, doing the training and completing the race was the only way that I could prove to myself that I was truly getting better and healthier, whatever that looked like. And so that's why I decided to go forward with it too. Like, I was very mindful about nutrition at the time, because, the vegetarian diet is very big in the autoimmune community, even though I don't, necessarily follow that diet anymore. But it was a lot of like, not just taking in all this new information about what comes with marathon training, but like learning all about how one can live with lupus or something that is autoimmune. So yeah, definitely some trial and error. Ran into a couple hiccups in that first marathon training cycle, but overcoming them was, the biggest sense of gratification. And then eventually crossing like that finish line and being elated and filled with this feeling that I can do anything that I had quote unquote needed, was like the catalyst for everything else since.
Would you like to share one of those magical moments? Because, you've completed like 12 marathons. You've also done like 3 50Ks, plus probably many, many more. And there's a couple of big races, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But, some of those magical memories that you've got from running marathons, that really stand out, that, you look back on now and you just get that sense of joy and happiness.
The first thing that popped into my side was like the technical side of things. It's like, I remember on a lot of these training runs where eventually I started to be like, a pacer or a group leader for people that were training with our club, and how knowledgeable I had grown about my body, like to the point where like I knew what pace I would be running at without looking at my watch. Like that felt very accomplished to me, to be so intuitive, because so much of having an autoimmune disorder requires you to learn your body very, very intimately. And the joy of just like sharing the miles week in and week out in these workouts with people of so many different abilities and backgrounds, and knowing that everyone is showing up in their own way for this shared goal, particularly where I live, like here in Los Angeles. Like the LA Marathon is a very huge deal for us. Like you can kind of sense the excitement in the air as it draws nearer, and all of these people are training for, you know, through the quote unquote winter months here in SoCal. But yeah, just seeing the way that the LA run community has grown and evolved over time is definitely like something I look back on with so much joy. And the fact that we can continue to grow and innovate in an ever changing like running atmosphere, it's really cool to see.
So you've run a very famous race called the Speed Project. Would you like to share a little bit more about the race, how that opportunity came about, and what that experience was like for you?
I did the Speed Project in 2023 on a team called Unlimited Women. So it was an all-women team with the goal to bring diversity and awareness into the running sphere. So we were, you know, women of all different backgrounds here in LA. Some of us that we knew we had run together. Some of us were new to each other, but we were brought together by Jocelyn the Warrior, a friend of mine, again, just to kind of amplify more women in running. And we're trying to kind of go not anti-speed project, but, you know, the name kind of tells you like what sort of runner you might expect to see. And we were trying to, you know, to be that voice of change, you know, in that particular race, which I think we did a pretty good job at. So it came about as like, you know, an ask from my friend, and the Speed Project by then had been something that I had just watched. I had always been excited about it over the years because I had many, many friends go through and complete it. And it got me curious. You know, so that's why I said yes, because this was an experience that, you know, I wanted to see firsthand. And I wanted to see again, because I was already in another bout with lupus, like in a lupus flare. So the extra challenge was at that time was seeing like, could I complete this thing? And again, manage those lupus symptoms that I was experiencing at the time. But if anybody hasn't done it or they haven't heard of it, it's a, you know, it's an unsanctioned relay race from Los Angeles to Las Vegas over the course of one weekend. Usually people are finishing by Sunday morning, and we leave at 4 a.m. the Friday before. It's an all-out controlled chaos of an event, because you'll just have people running on the highways and through the desert. And it's all in good fun.
What was the biggest challenge for you? You know, you mentioned having sort of like a lupus flare up. Were you running during the day, during the heat? Was it lack of sleep? You know, talk us through the experience with your team, you know, Unlimited Women, which sounds amazing. I love the name.
Yes, I think my biggest challenge was, again, what comes with the flare up for me is always a significant decrease in just running fitness. So that was a big concern for me, was like, would I be able to handle, you know, the segments that I have, knowing that like I wasn't fully 100%. But I had the trust in the team, and I had the trust in my body, and they were the ones that convinced me to just do what I was capable of doing at the time. Like I wasn't expected to be anyone other than who I showed up at, which was really comforting to hear. And that particular year that we did this in 2023, yes, it was not too hot as previous years had experienced, and not too cold. So the weather was pretty fine for me. I definitely say the lack of sleep can catch up to you, and not having like your usual meals available after a certain point of the race. So it was definitely a mental and emotional challenge for me more than physical.
So mentally, when it does get tough on those sections, when you're probably feeling fatigued, you haven't had the nutrition, you haven't had the sleep, what are the tips and tricks that you're using to get through those tough times?
I'd say definitely rely on your teammates if you can. Just, you know, just talking it out with someone, whether it's venting, you know, you may not be looking for a solution, but knowing that there's like, you know, 6, 8 other women who are probably feeling something similar can bring that camaraderie together. Remembering that it's also one weekend out of many weekends. So while it may feel so intense and not as great, then it's going to be something that you look back on and you'll have so many stories to tell. I think other than that, just find ways to bring yourself back to the moment. So for me, it wasn't about just like how fast I was running, but it was about where I was running. Because for the first time, it's like, I've never ran, alongside these cactuses. I'd never ran on this side of the Mojave and things like that, or seen like dunes off in the distance. So really focusing on the scenery around me, it really helped to bring like the event into perspective. And it took my mind off of what I may have been feeling otherwise in that moment.
So what was the strategy and how did it work? Did you have like a support vehicle with you? And would one person sort of be running and then you like tag a teammate? And were you trying to do like set distances? So like run 2 miles, tag, next one in, 2 miles, tag. What did that strategy look like?
Yes. So with a team of 10 women, we split off into 2 groups. So, and then, there are certain segments along the way from the start to the finish also. So our captain and some of our crew members were in charge of sort of assigning us to certain segments based on our different abilities, because there are road and trail sections along the way. So if all the runners are in group A were out doing their segments, they would have a support car and maybe an extra car along with them, while everybody else was in the RV already going ahead to the next exchange point where everybody would do a big switch. So it looks like people are starting off and they're running the whole segment, whether that can be from a 5K up until maybe 8 miles, which is how we started off in the beginning, just really using all the energy that we could while we felt fresh to do those longer segments. And then later on in the race, once it felt a little bit more difficult, that's when we started cutting the segments down a little bit. And like you said, it's simply just kind of running through a segment, having somebody waiting there, tag their hand, and then the next person is off. And it's such a system, because as soon as the next person's off, you're also hopping in the car to get to the next location. So then you can then exchange that next runner. So controlled chaos, like I said.
Control chaos. And I'm just thinking a logistical nightmare.
Yeah. The good thing about it is that you should have a crew. No runner should be thinking about like navigation at that point, which is why it's very important to have a crew of people who are going to have your back and the supplies that you need. And they're the ones in charge of basically seeing you from point A to point B, while we're just in charge of doing the running portion, really.
And were you vegetarian at this point?
No. I stopped being vegetarian, I want to say in 2017, maybe 2018. I started eating meat for a little bit, and then I dabbled in veganism, I think between 2019 to maybe early 2021. But right now maybe the right word is flexitarian.
Yeah.
I eat meat on occasion, but it's not like something that's really big in my diet. I still really like to rely on like fresh produce when I can. And that's from like a health and lupus perspective, but also just like a running perspective, making sure I'm eating all my nutrients and all that, with the occasional like, takeout treat, favorite being pizza and Thai food. But yeah, no longer vegan or vegetarian.
So what did your nutrition look like as you were running? Do you have like any go-to foods that you eat while you're running, if you eat while you're running, or any foods that you like to eat sort of before you run, or that you're eating to help you with your recovery?
Right now, I'm a big fan of making it easy before the run. So I keep Pop-Tarts in stock. I keep bread and to make toast and maybe some frozen waffles, put some peanut butter, a little bit of honey on them, occasionally a banana with that, also some caffeine before and after the run. So definitely keeping it easy for what I like to call, first breakfast, the way you eat before the run. And on the run, depending on the type, whether it's road or trail or how long it is, I will either use running gels, which I have, a bunch of different favorites, or sometimes I just like to use like real food also. So maybe I'm taking a granola bar or a fig bar out with me. It really just depends on the day. And again, how long I'll be out there. But I find that using a mix of different things, whether that's like a gel that I can squeeze, something that I can chew on, or even just regular candy here and there, it's all fuel that works really well for me. And always having something to drink with it, preferably with electrolytes and a few extra carbs. And then post run, trying to get either a protein shake first off, just to have something, again, super simple and easy after the run. And then a variety of breakfast options. So maybe that's a sandwich, maybe that is breakfast patties and a waffle. I think having more varied diet, but keeping like, your favorite stocked is kind of the method that I like to look at, and making sure the food that I'm eating kind of kind of just feels fun and tasty to me. I think when things start to feel kind of bland and repetitive, you're less likely to like to stick with them. So always trying to find different flavors and things like that to add into the mix.
I think the word I liked that you used was like easy, just making it easy.
Mm-hmm,
Because sometimes
mm-hmm.
when you've got like so much going on in your life, like nutrition can be so complicated and there's so many different options that actually the easy option is sometimes something which is, don't underestimate having the easy option and just
Right,
keeping it simple.
right. Yep.
The other amazing run that you did, which just again sounds incredible, you became the first Black woman to run from Boston to New York City, 200 miles in 11 days. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that experience. Well, A, because you live in LA, like, how did you come up with the idea of running from Boston to New York City? Is that like a thing that people do?
I think it's a thing that's coming up now, but I can't take credit for the idea. I was brought on to the project by a company called FALKE. It's originally a German European based athletic company. They had just recently started branching out into the US at the time, I think in early 2020 or 2021. So this was a project to both sort of like introduce the brand to the US market, but the fact that it was 6 women total running it, 3 from the US and 3 from all around Europe, with the theme kind of being women's empowerment, to be the first of its kind to do something like this, a very long stretch of time with some of the support they provided with like food and gear and recovery assistance. I was kind of like tapped on the shoulder by a friend of the brand that said like, hey, we're looking for there's some trail runners, there's some female runners. We really want to make it diverse. Diversity was a big aspect for them also. And this is sort of the concept. So it definitely wasn't something that I would say was in my bingo card, but I said yes because it was adventurous and it gave me a chance to run in a different part of the States that I hadn't really crossed through. Again, it's one of those things where you really don't know what you're taking on until you're in it. And the first day of that challenge, we were out there for about 2 weeks total. The first day of that challenge, I ran a 50K. It's not like I had been training for a 50K. I had done a marathon, the month prior. And yeah, to run a 50K on day one was just like really helped settle in just what we all had agreed to do. But the great thing about that too, like similar to the speed project, was just like we were all women of different abilities. It wasn't like everyone was required to do all the segments and all the distance on the day. It wasn't a relay in the sense that like we weren't, tagging off of each other each day. We were aware of the courses and the distances that we would be running through. And it was kind of up to us to decide like how long we would be going that day. So I kind of made it my mission to just do at least a half marathon a day, minus a day where I was like a little too sick to run. And like you said, like knowing that I was the first Black woman that we knew of to be doing such a trek across, 3 different states. We went from Massachusetts to Connecticut and then into New York. It's just like, that's something that kept running in the back of my mind throughout the whole thing. And it was really what kept me going, knowing that like I could be passing by a stranger in a car that had never seen someone that looked like me running out there. And then that's the inspiration for the next generation. And the fact that it was, also shown across social media really helped to get the message across too.
What was it like reaching New York City?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I love New York. I'm a fan of the city, but it was also a mix of relief and excitement. And it's one of those things where like you really don't know it's over until we cross like the finish line. There was a store Paragon Sports, that was like our quote unquote finish line, and the community support that we had even then was astounding. But like I still remember when we reached Washington Bridge and you're crossing over the bridge, you can see the city kind of like opening out from underneath you. And for me as like a city person, it was so exciting because for like, 10 days I had seen nothing but beautiful trails, like, being on the Appalachian and Seven Sisters for the first time. But after a lot of effort and a lot of miles, like it was very, very comforting for me personally just to be in like the city environment again.
So how much time did you have from being asked to do this to actually going over to Boston? Obviously you already like run a fit, but did you need or want to do any sort of extra training before that?
I think we got the green light officially maybe 4 or 5 months before the project was supposed to take place. And at the time, I also already knew that I would be going to Berlin to run the Berlin Marathon. And that's kind of what I base my fitness on. It's like, it's not an event that you can quote unquote train for, all you can do is, hope to be the fittest that you can at the time and do the best you can in the moment. So I was first really focusing on, being able to complete the Berlin Marathon. And I figured if I could do that, not be injured, not be sick, then I'd be good to go for the next project. And those two races were about a month apart.
Oh, I was going to say, that actually sounds perfect.
Yeah.
How is the Berlin Marathon? It's very flat, I hear.
It is flat. I loved it. It was a big vacation race for me, and I was taking all the videos and pictures along the course because I love the architecture. Oh my gosh, it was just an exciting time. Yeah, that was my first international race also. So I was really making a good vacation out of that time.
And I think that's one of the joys of going like running is getting to travel with it. Would you ever want to come and run London?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've entered the lottery, so hopefully I get in, but even if I don't, I know it'll happen, one of these days. But yeah, definitely looking to do a lot of, more races just all around the world.
Apparently the the lottery for London Marathon, something like 830,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what anybody's chances are, but
I mean,
yeah.
it's just, and I think it's like, I don't even know how many, I mean, I think it's like 40,000 runners or whatever. And it's just like, wow. Like, I feel like saying the odds are not in your favor for anyone to get, to get those tickets. Is it like that for the LA Marathon?
No, the LA Marathon is not one of the world majors, and it's also not a lottery system. But it has been growing in popularity over the years. It still sells out, I believe. And the interesting thing about it is that we get a lot of people that come into town to run it because, you get to run through Hollywood and so many different parts of the city. So I can definitely see the appeal for those that want to come in and spend, a week or a weekend visit in LA. And of course, they're always welcome. We have a lot of community support on course too, with the amount of run clubs that have grown in the city also. So it's not only do you get to a tour of the city, but you get to see just how much people in the city support each other.
I can almost see it becoming that way just because like even now, like London Marathon's hugely popular. The other big one in the UK is like Manchester and, Paris Marathon, Berlin, and then, the majors. And if you can't get into them and they're just so busy, then actually, going out somewhere like LA and, doing almost like what you did, like with, traveling to Berlin, traveling to Germany. It's like, the same for the Europeans, like to head over to the States just to like, let's go have a little holiday. Let's go to, is it Santa Monica Pier and, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You work as a running coach. You've got so many coaching qualifications, which is amazing. You're 80/20 endurance certified, the USA TF level 1 certified, the Coaches of Color apprentices, alumni. Tell us more about your coaching. And it sounds like a wishy-washy question, but it's not. I think it's quite important. But tell me more about like your coaching philosophy, your coaching values, and why people should work with you.
I finally made the decision to coach full time. This year would be my first time doing full time, but I have been coaching since 2021, 2022, since I got that first certification. And, looking back, it's like you get these little inklings of where you were going to end up. And the fact that I had always been in a position of service in the different jobs that I've had, it all makes sense. I still get to help people and talk to people, whether it's virtually or in person here. So I coach road, trail, and autoimmune athletes. In the sense that as someone who has and still continues to deal with an autoimmune condition, I didn't see a lot of support in the endurance world for people that were going through similar things like me. So while I'm not, a doctor or a physical therapist, I have found that just having someone that can relate to you and has similar goals makes a world of difference for people that have also been diagnosed and they're curious about how their life in athletics could begin. I'm a big fan of road running as well as trail running. I started trail running back in 2018. So getting people who are at the beginner level of trail running is really important to me, especially from an accessibility standpoint for people of color. And then road running will always be fun. I'm a huge fan of the marathon. Like you said, I've done 12 so far and I have no plans of slowing down or stopping. But coaching has been one of the hardest, but also most joyous transitions, I'd say, in my adult life. And to your question, use are education, communication, commitment, and joy. I like to say that if you're working with me, it's more than just a training plan. We really try to learn about the different aspects that support one's training, whether that is through nutrition and pacing, mental strength and endurance, and observation and reflection, communication. I'm always in touch with my athletes, whether that's like online on our training platform or via email or text. Commitment, because I am trying to foster a lifelong love for not just running, but just like movement. If marathons and stuff or ultras is not your jam, that's like not a problem with me. As long as you are one of those people who are looking for ways to improve their health or to learn, like I said, those different ins and outs of runnings, I'd be happy to work with you and enjoy, because that's kind of what really ties everything together. If we're not having fun, nothing really starts to click or get implemented. So we always have to make sure that we're making it adaptable to your life and adaptable to your goals and working together as a team.
And one of the other things that you have as well is you have a podcast. Would you like to share a little bit more about the podcast, what sort of topics you cover off, and what people can expect from listening to it?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm actually in the process of revamping and relaunching the podcast, as I had to take a break when I started to focus more on coaching. But the name of my podcast, it's called Running in Public, and it's sort of a play on words, as I have my master's in public health, and the subject of public health is something near to me and dear to me. So I wanted to try and combine running and public health and to bring about a new conversation like in the running world. So my podcast isn't one of those that's like athlete interview based. It actually revolves around running clubs and how I feel like they're the new frontier of public health, as, you know, they're their neighborhood ambassadors. They're the ones that know what's going on with their community and in the streets and all that. And they're day in and day out, week in and week out, getting people on their feet, whether that is walking or hiking or running. So I really want to try and highlight the clubs around the US, but also around the world, and what they're doing to support the communities, while sprinkling in different aspects of public health that ties into what they're doing with. So whether that is like building community spaces or like the neighborhood impact and all that. Yeah, hopefully just to bring about a new conversation and a new lens to running.
The first thing that I think about is like park run. Mm-hmm. So ever since its inception, I can't remember how many years ago, like all of the things that you talked about in terms of, especially with regards to public health, like getting people moving, getting people outside, spending time in nature and the outdoors. But also the other sort of, I think, really important element is around the social side of things, the community, feeling a sense of belonging, like having a purpose and feeling welcomed. Like, when will it be back up and running, or how many episodes are there at the moment? And is it going to be like seasonal or weekly, or how often will you be producing the episodes?
So there are currently 3 episodes up from its first iteration, as I was kind of getting my feet wet. Going forward, I plan to have just 2 episodes a month. Got to manage the load, and one episode will be an interview with run club founders or leaders, and the other one will just be sort of a solo episode where I dive into various public health topics and help everybody kind of see how it connects to running.
And Mireille, where can people connect with you? How can they find out more about you, about your running, but also about the coaching and your podcast? Where are you most active on social media?
I would say both Instagram and also my website. So, my Instagram is Hey Coach Mireille. That's my personal one. The podcast is runninginpublic.pod. And my website is coachedbymireille.com.
Awesome. Mireille, I would love for you to have final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women out there who want to get into running. They may be suffering from an autoimmune disease at the moment and not quite sure about what their next steps are going to be. What advice would you like to share apart from just do it?
2 pieces of advice. The first one would be to always advocate for yourself and speak up. And the second piece of advice, to remember to make it fun. I find that once you get too in the weeds of something, or it becomes something that feels like a chore, it's very important to kind of step back and get a world's eye view of something. And remember that this is just something that we do for fun. We do it for our health. And, the world isn't going to end if you miss a run here or there, or you have to take a rest day, but advocate for yourself and always remember to make it fun.
Absolutely. Mireille, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast. It's been amazing to speak to you and learn more about your running journey.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Hey tribe, how you're doing? I hope you're keeping well. We are coming into the month of June 2024, which I'm very excited about, as hopefully the weather is going to start becoming a little bit more sunny, a little less rainy, although it is the UK, so we definitely cannot guarantee that. June is an exciting month on the Tough Girl podcast, as Innovate is going to be sponsoring. So there's going to be new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 a.m. UK time. So Innovate has been a previous sponsor of the Tough Girl podcast. You may remember for a couple of years, we did the March Daily Mile Challenge, where we were running 1 mile every day in March. Didn't do this year as I was away traveling, but they are sponsoring the podcast in June. We're going to be speaking to a mix of runners, hikers, adventure athletes, and travelers. You can also get a 15% discount by following the link on the Tough Girl website. I'm also very excited to share about my next adventure. I'm going to be taking on one of the UK national trails, just a little one, the Cotswold Way, which is 102 miles, 164 kilometres, which starts in Chippington, Camden, in Gloucestershire, and ends in Bath in Somerset. I'm actually going to be doing it in reverse, so walking from Bath to Gloucestershire, but I'll just share a little bit more about the national trail. So following the western edge of the Cotswold Hills, the route journeys through rolling pastures, beech woodland, and honey-coloured villages built from Cotswold stone. You will explore ancient commons in an area of outstanding natural beauty, past Neolithic burial barrows, stately homes, and historic battle sites. The stunning path along the Cotswold Escarpment offers ever-changing views to the west towards the River Severn and the Malvern Hills. Super excited to take on this challenge. This is part of training for the larger national trail, which I'm going to be taking on in August, which is going to be the Southwest Coast Path, which I am super excited about. I will be sharing that journey on Instagram at Tough Girl Challenges, and I will be filming it for YouTube. I haven't had any new YouTube videos coming out for a while, but they are coming, I promise you. Hopefully in the next couple of months, I'll be able to release some more videos and vlogs from some of my previous adventures and challenges. I'm going to be wearing Innovate gear on this trail as well, which I'll be excited to share with you. And the trainers that I'm going to be wearing are going to be the Rocklite G315 GTX. I know it sounds complicated, but the G315 basically tells you the weight of the shoe. GTX tells you that it's Gore-Tex. I'm wearing Rocklite G315 grams for the trainers, Gore-Tex trainers. So really excited to be testing them out on this hike. Thank you again for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. Like I mentioned earlier, new episodes coming out every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 a.m. UK time. And a big shout out to Innovate for sponsoring all of these incredible episodes and allowing me to continue to showcase incredible female role models who are doing amazing adventures and physical challenges. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.